welcome to this edition of the Evening Review. My name is Jemima Birkus, your host this evening. Now, before we go into this evening's interview, we will pay respect to the late President Hage Geingob, and for that we'll go for a quick message from the National Road Safety Council.
On behalf of the National Road Safety Council and all stakeholders in the road safety subsector, I extend our deepest and heartfelt condolences to the former First Lady, Madam Hage Geingob, the bereaved family, the relatives, friends, and the entire Namibian nation on the sudden passing of our beloved President, His Excellency Dr. Hage Geingob. His leadership, resilience, and firm belief in systems, institutions, and processes will forever be kept and cherished in our hearts, as well as his belief in unity, inclusivity, and equality. I, on behalf of the National Road Safety Council and all stakeholders in the road safety subsector, join the rest of the nation in mourning the passing of our distinguished leader. May his soul rest in eternal peace.
Welcome back. Now, if you've just joined us, my name is Jemima Birkus, your host for this evening's review edition. We have in the studio this evening Mr. Tjaronda. He is a social activist, and we'll talk about the President Hage Geingob's legacy when it comes to poverty alleviation. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Tjaronda.
Thank you, Jemima, and thank you for having me on this platform.
Now, Mr. Tjaronda, can you share with us your perspective on the overall impact of the late President Geingob's tenure on poverty alleviation and social development, and how you believe he would be remembered in this regard?
Well, thank you so much, Jemima. And first and foremost, allow me to also pay tribute to the late President. On behalf of civil society, I want to convey our deepest, sincere condolences to the First Lady, Madam Geingob, the children, the entire family, and I believe also the chief mourner, who is the current President Bumba. We hope that you remain strong during this difficult time, and rest assured, Madam First Lady, former First Lady now, that we are with you in this loss. Coming back to your question, as social scientist and social activist, obviously we study how our leaders respond to the promises that they make, particularly during elections. We study how they respond and whether what they are doing is consistent with what is outlined in the laws, in the policies, in the programs that have been outlined. And I think we should say that the late President did a sterling job to try to lift many out of poverty. Coming with a program such as a whole fully fledged ministry, Ministry of Poverty Eradication, and also appointing one of us, Reverend Kameta, was from civil society. He was with the churches when he was appointed, if you remember, to become and to champion that process. Coming with new interventions such as food bank, it was deliberately to try to lift many out of poverty. We might not entirely agree with the approach because poverty is really cross-cutting, and sometimes if you put it in a separate entity to run it, it becomes the responsibility of that ministry alone and not everybody running programs that are actually poverty, targeting the eradication of poverty. So obviously the programs around the pensions, the social grants, that also helped a lot in lifting many, particularly the pensioners. When you look at the responsibility of a pensioner, is just beyond a pensioner. They look after their grandchildren, they look after their houses that are left in Windhoek, in particular in urban settings. Everybody depends on the pensioner. So it becomes looking also against the perspective of unemployment that is high in the country. You've got a lot of people that are actually depending on the pensioner. So beyond actually giving a grant to a pensioner, you're actually giving a grant to a family. Where we disagreed, maybe we felt it was very slow, was the whole basic income grant, which was a universal grant that we championed and we even tested in Omitara. It worked. It transformed lives. And but they came with what they call a revised basic income grant, which the conversation was there. He was entertaining that conversation, and he continuously continued to see how it can be refined. So we can still, again, give him a thumb up for that he did so well in championing those processes.
You mentioned the food bank. Can you just tell us, you are obviously on the ground, what role did the food bank play to alleviate poverty in Namibia?
The food bank, I'm not entirely sure how it has actually done. I don't have the data around it, because in most places where food bank, I believe it was benchmarked against, say, the US has got a food bank program. I think currently that food bank has been changed into vouchers now. People are getting vouchers because the food bank was people getting food. It was, I believe I hear people talking about the Harambe food and so forth. So they even had names around it. But I think the thing with food bank is that you need to go deeper than just giving people food. You need to go deeper to the production side to look at where are we getting this food, what is the source of this food, so that at the end of the day it turns into a process that you leverage on as an economy, so that you help also to bring out the producers to the fore, so that they also, you can draw food from them, you can get food from them. It's not like now you're getting rice from somewhere else. It's good, yes, to get rice from some international donors, but it's sustainably, if you're looking at it from a sustainable perspective, you need to actually look at how do you help the farmers to start to produce so that they can supply that process. So it's important that we look at it, but I still appreciate the voucher that is now being given, and I believe it's good, it's being put to good use. The only challenge always that even with the basic income grant that we had argument about was how sustainable it is. Where are we going to get the money from? Is it cheap? Is it what? But that argument still, looking at what is happening currently with regard to programs that are being run, whether you're talking about the pension payouts, that at the end of the day it's administered, in my view, expensively. And it could be cheaper if the transactional costs are actually removed, if the middle woman and man is removed, if there is a way that these elderly people can get their money, and a lot of money could actually be channeled to them instead of paying someone in the middle to be running up and down the whole country and paying them. I believe there could be another channel that can be explored. In the absence of that, I still believe is an expensive transactional cost that is being paid by the nation.
Mr. Tjaronda, you said the president was definitely, when it comes to the basic income grant, the late president can be given a thumbs up. What was exactly, you said you had discussions with him, he seemed to have been for it. What were his views, and do you believe that he would have implemented that?
His views were very, very, it's good to differ. I mean, I still remember him, in fact, coming closer to that process, even when he was not even the president. I remember when he was still a bank bencher, he came to one of our meetings, civil society meeting. It was very late. I remember it was a very cold evening. We were sitting somewhere discussing the basic income grant. A civil society organization, he joined us. He sat there with us. And I also remember that when we were having the Mitara pilot project, he actually contributed some money to that project. I think it was $100 every month that he was contributing to that. So he was paying actually someone in Omitara, he paid for the pilot process. And the result came. Obviously, we presented the result to the nation to say, this is what we're saying. This universal grant can actually help because it breaks the means test, because all the grants are having a means test. You are testing whether somebody has got a disability. You are testing whether somebody is an orphan. You have to test. And sometimes it actually creates a problem because some people move into those brackets deliberately. Because they want to access those resources. You need to break that and make sure that a family from a child of 0 age to an elderly person, even if you have to breach it with the elderly pensioners, but maybe to 59 years, actually receive a universal grant. And that helps because it also breaks poverty. It also helps people to have the means to do certain things. Say somebody, for instance, who never ever is able to buy a newspaper to even get access to the information. How will they get that access to information if they don't have the money to buy the newspaper on a daily basis? So what that means, they are missing out on a lot of opportunities that are passing by. So those are the thinking around it. But also if you look at it from a universal point of view, it also does not discriminate. A universal grant allows everybody to come and get their 100. That time when we were talking about it was $100. Now we are talking about it from inflation and from all the economic factors that have affected the economy. It could be around $500 that somebody has to get every month. That's almost the $700 that we got during COVID, which I don't know what informed that, but at least we said for us to absorb the shock in the nation, let's give everybody a $700. And that should have been coming from somewhere. So that's very, very important that we match it against the economic factors and what is happening around the economy. And I think that is where we need to be moving. So his point was really, really around the sustainability, whether it will not create dependency, all those arguments. And those are very critical issues that everybody can raise. Does it not create dependency? Is it sustainable to be giving people? Are people not going to sit back and not go and look for a job to be giving somebody a 500? Is not, but we still are arguing that it's not, because this is like a drop in the ocean. This is just like catalyst. It's just helping somebody to move to do something.
Mr. Tjaronda, you said when you had the discussions with when the late president created the Ministry of Poverty Eradication, and he had appointed someone from civil society, that there was some differences between civil society and the office and how it is managed. How would you want it to be run in an ideal world?
Poverty is cross-cutting. It cannot be one. It's created by various factors, social factors. So you can, for instance, look at our education system. And you're saying maybe education goes scot-free because it's just education. Education, if the education is not delivering, you will have many children coming out of the education system and not actually being absorbed to move forward. That means they are dropping out of school and they are not getting anywhere, and that's where the poverty comes in, because there is a lot of investment that the parents make and commit to these children to get their education, and ultimately they don't get anything out of it. You're looking at our programs, whether you're talking about the mining sector, the extraction industry, whether you're talking about fisheries and marine resources, what are we doing about poverty? So it's a cross-cutting thing. Everywhere, everybody must be able to do programs and to program to look at poverty or people-centered programs that can help alleviate poverty. So in a way, I think the ministry was not given much capacity and power to be able to actually confront those organizations, institutions, to be able to hold them accountable, to say, what are you doing about poverty? How are you making sure that your program are eradicating poverty and you are not actually pushing people down the drain of poverty?
So can you also tell us how have grassroots organizations, civil society organizations, what was their relationship and your relationship with the late president?
The president, some people are rightly saying he was the people's president, and I think that that's true. I can't agree more. I think he was everybody's president. So grassroots organizations, whether you're talking about traditional authorities, they had access. Whether you're talking about churches, they had access. Whether you're talking about youth organizations, they had access. So everybody who at some point wanted to speak, to have dialogue with the president, had that opportunity. And that is something that was very unique in his administration, because he allowed people to be who they are, to come out to speak to him. Even if he doesn't agree with them, he allowed them to express their views and opinions. That's how democracy should really operate. Mm-hmm. You might not come out of that state house happy. You might even come out of that state house being angry because he did not give you the answer that you wanted. But that's immaterial. What is important is you agree to disagree. You disagree on certain issues. You also disagree to agree, because you disagree to formulate an agreement. So those are important factors in a democracy that we need to always treasure. Mm-hmm. And he was very, very much a patriot to the core, in my view, because he was actually, in his conviction, he would stand by his conviction. You don't have somebody who was like, you don't even know where they stand. You know where he stood on a certain issue. So he was accessible to all. That's why I believe he actually appointed a lot of young people and lifted a lot of young people to his office, to his administration, governors, ministers. You have the youngest minister currently of ICT, 28 years. She comes from her legacy.
Mm-hmm. How do you assess the late president's approach to addressing both monetary and multidimensional aspects of poverty during his time? You have reflected on it to some point, but do you think he's really committed financially?
He was. I think as the third president, by the way, he could have done a lot if he was somebody who was believing in institutions. And so if you are following institutions, if you are following systems, you must be systematic in how you approach things. You are not going to wake up as a president tomorrow and say, I declare that now this thing must be done. Because you still have institutions that you must be accountable to. There are checks and balances. So he did not abuse his executive powers because he was the president. He would just say, morning and everybody wakes up, everybody should have bread in their hand. No, I think he looked at, if you look at programs, he introduced some of them that were very difficult to go through. The NEF, all this program that he was trying to introduce was to try to even up a very unequal country. You remember Namibia is one of the most unequal country in the world. Second most. So he wanted to make sure that you bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. You try very hard, but it's a very difficult task. And I think he did, again, an exceptional job, trying very hard. He tried, there was difficult blocks, there were difficult barriers of housing, difficult limitation to get people out of shacks, difficult limitation to get employment, to break the whole unemployment. 50% of young people currently are unemployed. It's difficult because it's spewing from so many factors, from the education system that is failing us, in my view, and so many other areas. And so, but as a president, I think he did well. He just was trapped in a system that he believed it should work, but sometimes was not working, delivering.
Can you please elaborate on what you mean he was trapped in a system? Because you are saying he did well, and he tried to address the issue. I mean, he at some point even declared the informal settlements a humanitarian crisis, and yet all of these issues became worse under his government. The income gap got wider, the shacks sprawled, and the youth unemployment skyrocketed. So in the context of you saying that he was stuck in a system, why did all of these things get worse when he, as you said, attempted to make it better?
Contextually, I think if we contextualize the administration against the kind of shocks that it went through, there was no administration previous to his administration that had COVID. There was no administration that prepared the nation for pandemic, against any pandemic that can hit the nation. His administration came just right in the middle of a storm. where there were COVIDs, where people had to go home because there was no work, where everything came to a standstill. But why I'm saying he was caught up in a system, he was caught up in a system of a legacy that he had to still carry. He came from a legacy of 2 other presidents that were there. Whether those presidents had created backlogs in some certain areas, he needed to unblock and to open up those opportunities so that, if you're looking at housing, it was not a problem. The problem of housing did not emerge with him. Shack dwelling started a long time ago. We should have stopped it a long time ago. Displacement, land reform issues. He tried it in 1991, the first land conference. We don't know what has happened afterwards. Systems I'm talking about, because implementation becomes an issue. 2018, the second National Land Conference, land reform is still a headache up to today. We have not done much. We have not moved much. People are still crying for land. So these are the issues that he tried to unlock, but it was very, very difficult because he had to still satisfy certain interests within the system that he is operating in. So whether you're talking about party loyalism, whether you're talking about being a true leader, you have to balance somewhere whether you are a nationalist or a party loyalist. So sometimes that connection becomes very, very difficult to find the bridge. But I think at the end of the day, even with all those challenges, I think he did his part. Humanly speaking, I think he did his part and he did his job very well.
Mr. Tjaronda, in conclusion, if you say the president was stuck in a system that, from what I understand, it was not necessarily working, does that mean there's no hope for the president that is currently in office, because that's the same system that president is coming into?
The current president that is there has said it himself. He's just finishing the unfinished business. So the systems are still there, but some of them are really not working, in my view, and I would stand by that position. We are known for having the best.
Would you say it's a broken system?
Not that harsh.
How would you describe the system?
Systems are there, but the problem is implementation. Systems are there. The problem is, in fact, we have the best systems perhaps in the world. If you look at the systems of transition that is empowered and that is embedded in the Constitution, the way that transition took place, some of the people are still arguing, was it constitutional, was it not constitutional? But the fact remains, today we are sitting here, me and you talking. If it was another country, we would have been under the bridges running or running in trucks and finding places to hide, because instability could have crept in. And we are not taking our pace for granted by that matter. So we must commend ourselves that we stood firm in this trial moment, this difficult time, something that has never happened to our nation before. It's unprecedented. So we must commend ourselves that today we can still have the liberty to speak and to talk to each other. We can't say the systems are not. What I'm saying is Namibia is known for having policies, very good policies, but implementation becomes a problem. So we need to work harder on implementation, making sure that we translate these good policies into implementable programs so that we can reach the populations.
Thank you very much for joining us this evening, Mr. Tjaronda.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. Until next time.